we are past the point of no return where we can borrow our way to prosperity. There is no easy way out of this. And people really need to read all of this and try and get, this is what I was trying to do. The reason this book is not some huge intimidating book with every fact in it, but it packs all of this very densely into the book, is so that people can read this and try and hold it all in their mind at once and see the big picture. And when you do that, you see what the outcome might be in the future, because you've got all of the facts that are the basis that create the future.
Mm-hmm. So, as you say, we're really past the point of no return here. And obviously, you see gold and silver being real solutions to this and beneficiaries of that shifting wealth cycle. Do you see clues that smart money or large entities see the tide of gold and silver, of the gold and silver rush, and are accumulating these metals?
Yes. First of all, central banks have now purchased more gold recently than at any time in history, even when we were under the gold standard. And it's all the Eastern central banks. It's China, it's India, it's Russia, it's Turkey, and that says that they think that something is up, right? And they're trying to accumulate this safe haven asset. And then the other thing is, I do show a chapter in there, very short chapter. I probably should have put it online because this may change, but the commodities exchange, where the price of gold and silver is set. It's set on the London Exchange and the COMEX, the commodities exchange, which is now in New York. These exchanges trade futures contracts. And it can be sometimes, there is some metal in the vault there, and there's some in the registered category where it's available for delivery into one of these contracts. But with silver, sometimes there would be 300 or 500 ounces sold in contracts for each ounce that's actually in the vaults. So it's a fractional reserve scheme. Now, when COVID hit, there was this sudden panic. And for some reason, the COMEX needed to increase its inventories, like, I don't know, fourfold or something like that. And it was very interesting when you look at all of the international flows. China has been accumulating steadily for many years. I think the charts go back to 2005 or something, and they accumulate all the time. You take official plus Shanghai and Hong Kong imports for their exchanges, and there was gold flowing into China constantly. The U.S. was always a gold exporter, year after year after year. And then 2020, suddenly, the rest of the world stopped accumulating gold, and only the United States accumulated enormous quantities of gold. And then the amount that has been taken off of the COMEX, if you corrected for this enormous increase, and now it's going down, if you took out that enormous increase, there's more that's been taken out of the COMEX than existed on the COMEX before the COVID crash, the panic there. And so I do believe that there are some very, very large, powerful entities that are getting ready for something very, very big. One of the reasons I wrote the book is because my first book also, when you look at any society, that society is what they are is determined by the middle class. The middle class is usually about 70% of a country's population, and their vote determines the direction of that country. When the middle class is impoverished, that's when you see the rise of somebody like Hitler, or people following somebody like Mao or Lenin. It's whenever the middle class is impoverished and they become scared, that they look towards somebody very, very powerful. And I worry about that, actually. And so I wrote my first book to try to prevent that, to try to get as much gold and silver into the hands of the middle class, something that rises, because gold and silver they're almost the anti US dollar stock market, bond market. They rise. You look at when the war in Ukraine started, gold and silver, when the geopolitical tensions, they are the crisis hedge. They're not necessarily an inflation hedge or this hedge or that hedge. They are a crisis hedge, and they're the place that you can rely on it. Everything else requires the performance of a counterparty. Gold and silver are the only thing that you can buy, take delivery of, and even real estate. If you want to sell the real estate, you've got to transact through a bank. There's escrow and all of that. An ounce of gold is just something that you own. It's not like if you own a stock, that company has to do well and not go bankrupt. And then there's the stock exchange and your brokerage house that also have to perform their function for that to have any value. In a crisis, are all of these things going to be there? Gold and silver that you own outright will be there. It's guaranteed, and that's one of the reasons all of the Eastern central banks are starting to accumulate in such quantity.
It's interesting that you bring up that example of the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine. You also use the words unaffordium and unobtainium when describing the day that everybody wants these metals, or, worse, a catastrophic situation, a terrorist attack, something like that. I actually did an interview with a gentleman from Russia, one of the listeners of our show, right after the war started in Ukraine. And he used those same words of unaffordium and unobtainium. He couldn't get gold. He couldn't get cash, but he, going through the education of learning about the things that you and I both talk about, he was more prepared, and he was grateful for the fact that he did have some gold and some silver and some cash on hand.
Yes. Well, when I talk about unaffordium and unobtainium, part of what I'm talking about in that chapter is that if you wait until the very end, until you absolutely need these things, that's when it becomes very, very difficult to get and very, very expensive to get. We have at goldsilver.com, we've got a very high rating as far as customer service goes and all of those things, delivery. But whenever there's a rush, our rating goes down. Why? It's a business. We've got a certain number of employees, and then suddenly the business increases tenfold during a crisis, and we can't ramp up. We can't just instantly call in 10 times more employees to service everybody. It's like, you go to your supermarket and there's parking for 100 cars. What happens if one day 1,000 cars all want to show up at the same time? People can't get in the doors. There's not enough shopping carts. That is the situation. Just, people used to ask me when I thought this would happen, when the crisis will happen. And